One of the real big mistakes is people start with the questions first, and they'll come up with, and they'll say, I want to know all the questions I want to ask. Again, you're thinking about a survey. If I'm the quiz taker, I don't need to know my first name and last name. I don't need to know how many husbands I have, right? Because, I already know that stuff, but you want to give them value that they didn't have before. You have to give them insight. And if you're only asking survey questions, it's really hard to do, because if I'll share the data with you, I don't want to know my age and my kids and all. I don't know that. So you have to start with the outcomes first rather than the questions.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. My name is Chris Kiefer, and today I am with Tai Goodwin, who is the founder of That Marketing Team. And we actually connected through a mutual contact on LinkedIn. And the thing that made me reach out to Tai was she was talking about some really, really cool stuff with ChatGPT. So that's going to be the topic of the conversation today. But before we get into that, Tai, thanks for being on here. And why don't you give us a quick bio of who you are?
Well, thanks, Chris, for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I am Tai Goodwin, CEO of That Marketing Team, and I'm also the creator of Quiz and Grow Rich. I've been in this online marketing space for about 20 years, and yes, I did start when I was 12, just in case anybody was wondering. But I've been in this space for a while. I absolutely love marketing, but what I love most is helping my clients generate more leads and feel confident about marketing because they know how it works.
So the Quiz and Go Rich, what is that? That sounds super interesting.
Yeah, so Quiz and Grow Rich is a play on Napoleon Hill's book Think and Grow Rich. And so Quiz and Grow Rich is my strategy, the framework that we use to create quizzes that generate leads for clients. When I left my last day job, I needed a way to get in front of more people. And I ended up using a quiz. And within 4 months, I used a quiz to grow my email list from 1,700 people to over 12,000 subscribers in just 4 months, all with one quiz and one ad. And I realized I was onto something. And so I started doing the same thing for my clients, and they were getting results too.
So just curious, ad spend wise, you go from 1,700 to 12,000. How much did you spend in ad dollars to get that?
That is always the question, and people are like, oh my gosh, it must have been thousands. We spent over those 4 months, we spent about $600 a month. That was it.
Wow.
That was
That's
it.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And this was, so give me a background on, so that's what you're doing now. How did you get to just, what ultimately led you to say, hey, I'm going to start my own marketing company? And then further, I'm assuming that happened before the quiz thing. And then the
Um,
quiz was the phase two, or is it all kind of at the same time?
a little bit after, so when I first started getting into this online world, I wanted to do coaching. And I wanted to be a career coach, but this is at a time when career coaching was still like a very new thing. And I did know though and learn how to use Facebook. This was back in 2007, 2008, when Facebook and Twitter and all those things were just getting started. And I became a master at learning how to use those tools. And so people said, well, could you teach us how to do it too? So I started teaching people how to build blogs. We were using like WordPress, but there were some other like little platforms back then that we were using for blogging. We were building blogs. We were doing, talk radio, blog talk radio, and talk shoe were the podcasting tools back then. We were doing podcasts in our cars. I mean, it was the wild, wild west back then. And I
That's
started
awesome.
teaching people how to do it. And they said, well, can you just do it for me? And so I started actually doing things for people. But with this iteration, again, I started coaching again. And then what I realized was a lot of my clients, they are so brilliant at what they do, but they struggle with the execution. And that's what holds them back. And so instead of them trying to be the CEO and their own marketing department, they could just hire us to be their marketing department, and they can be the CEO and do all the stuff that they love.
There's two things that jump out to me with what you just said. One is, uh, can you just do it for me? Or like, hey, why don't you just let us do this and you be the CEO? But I guess I'll tackle the first one, which immediately I'm thinking of the book Who Not How. Have you read that one?
I have. Oh, yeah.
So to me, like, tell me about that. That these people are deciding I'm going to go with the who route instead of figuring out how do I solve this problem.
Well, yeah, because if you really want to grow your business, at some point you realize that you can't wear both hats. and have a life. You can't wear both hats and have sustainability. You can't really wear both hats and become,
Or
you know,
3 hats or 4 hats or 5 hats, not
exactly,
just two.
exactly. And a lot of us are used to that because a lot of us are corporate people, right? We came from corporate environments. And I was in HR and training for about 20 years in the corporate space, right? And so, and you're in HR and training, you do everything, right? You need me to build a program, you need me to just teach the program, you need me to write the copy. And so we carry that mindset a lot into the work that we do. We'll just do everything. And at some point, when you put your big girl panties on, right, and you
Hmm.
decide that you want to really build a business and not just like be a freelancer that calls yourself an entrepreneur, you have to step up and say, okay, there's some things that I need to release and let go so that I can focus on being the visionary, being the leader, being the person that drives this company to the next level.
That's awesome. And then the other, what was the other thing that I had said?
About them wanting me to do it for them.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was going to say this also reminds me that you start teaching people. I don't know if you were doing that via YouTube videos or emails or whatever, but that's another thing that I'm curious if this has been true for you. That there's a fear for a lot of service-based businesses that they can't tell people how they do their stuff because people are just going to do it themselves. And I I have fear, like a subtle, like that's a voice in my head because I
Uh-huh.
do automation and specifically for painting companies, and tie their softwares together to make it just more streamlined.
Mhm.
And there's a part of me that's like, and this was maybe 4 months ago, where I was like worried that if I told people exactly how I did what I do, that they would just, no one would hire me. They just do that. But the reality is that, and I'm now inching closer and closer to having a course to teach people how to do this.
Mhm.
But there's still, or this is again my hope and belief, is that I will tell every single secret, everything I've learned, every ounce of knowledge in my brain. I will do my best to articulate it clearly for someone else to do it themselves. And there might be people that do that, and there will be for sure. But there are also going to be more people that are like, that sounds cool. And also, I don't have time. So can you do it? You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you a really great example. How many people do you know that actually have cars, that pay insurance, that have a license, and they still take Uber? Right?
Mm,
It's the same thing. We see it so often, but we don't realize it, right? People still take Uber that have cars. It's the same exact thing. And so you're right. People are not going to want to do it. Like for example, for us, when we were building our quiz process, I sat down with one of my developers and we realized there are like 70, 80 steps for building a quiz from start to finish. Now, I could show you exactly what I do. I could give you all the tools, but do you really want to sit there and go through those 80 steps? Now,
mm,
I can do it because I've been doing it for so long, and it's going to take me this long to do it, you know?
yeah.
But
Yep.
if it's not your language, if it's not the thing that you're used to, the learning curve can be huge. So you have to factor those things in. There's so much knowledge and wisdom that you have, and this may be helpful for you even with your course, because that's my background is in instructional design. That's what I
Mm,
did in corporate was I designed training programs for companies like Barnes and Noble, Lead Pages, all that kind of stuff, right? You know, what has taken you years to learn, no one will ever be able to fit that in like the 2 hour course that people are willing to maybe sit through. Right?
mm,
You know,
yep.
it's just not going to work. They would hate you if you tried to put all of your knowledge into a 2 hour course. So there's always going to be room for people to come back to you, Chris, and get what they can't get from a video or what they can't get from a Google document or what they can't get from YouTube.
So in your case, people were hiring you to teach them, or was this free content that you were putting out, and they were like, "Can you?" Or were you just talking about the cool stuff you're doing, and kind of no further plan? I mean, maybe a plan of like people will find this attractive and come to me, but what was this like? How deep was your strategy when you were sharing like, "Hey, check out how I made this quiz"?
Right. Well, back then it wasn't quizzes. Back then it was all about at the beginning of it was all about like Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. And back then, remember this was still when everything was new. So it was me. Hey, let me share this content. Let me do this. People say, "Oh my gosh, I see you all over the place, and you're doing really well on here. Can you show me how to do it?" And so it started off with, "I will show you how," and then it graduated into, "Okay, can I just pay you to do it? And then we started
Mm,
creating courses. Like I was running challenges back then. I didn't even know, that it was a whole, like now it's a whole market, right? People doing challenges. But, I was running challenges. I did something called the 15-15 challenge, 15 things you can do in 15 minutes or less to grow your business. I
mm,
took that and I turned it into an ebook and then I sold the ebook, right?
mm.
So there's always been this model of let me share what I can, but then if you want more, or how can we take you to the next step, then we have the price tag that gets added on that after we bring you in with value from the free content that we deliver.
Yeah, love that. Um, so yeah, let's the I'm assuming when you started making quizzes, ChatGPT wasn't a thing
It
because
was
that
not.
was at least 3, 4 years ago, and ChatGPT's what is it, a year old yet? I can't
Yeah.
remember when I first heard about it. But anyways, yeah, give me the walkthrough of like tell me about quizzes and then how are you leveraging AI to speed that up, make them better, whatever.
Yeah, well, I actually made my first quiz probably back in 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. And it's when I was still coaching people. And I was working with a lot of people who were like me, we were, full-time employees, part-time entrepreneurs. I called us employedpreneurs. And everybody was like, well, they told me I need to be a coach because that was the hot thing, right? You should be a coach. You should be a coach. But some of my clients were so unhappy because they really weren't coaches. And so that very first quiz that I created, and it wasn't online, it wasn't a digital quiz at the time, it was a paper based quiz, but it was about what type of entrepreneur are you, right? And it broke it down into 4 different places. So that was the first iteration of it. And then I digitized it in about 2015, which meant that people can go online and take it and they don't get a PDF download. They don't have to send me their answers. We're going to put it into a digital format where they can actually answer the questions. And then that information can be sent to an email platform. They can be segmented and tagged. And I know this is getting exciting because now we're talking about all the automation stuff, right? But then it
Mm-hmm.
can be tagged and segmented, and then we can send them automatic messages based on their answer. So now your content is personalized. And so
Mm.
that didn't happen until 2015. But when I left my last day job, around 2017, 2018 was when I put it in full force. Because before I was just using it for my clients internally, but then I decided to use it as a way to generate leads.
That's awesome. I was going to say there's a guy that you're making me think of, Tim Glom. Have you heard of him?
I have not. I thought you were going to say the other
He's
guy.
no, not Tim Ferriss. Is that what you were going to say?
No,
Uh,
there's a Ryan guy.
Another Tim. Oh, Tim. Yeah. So Tim Glom, he has a company called Audience Sherpa,
Okay.
and it just is. I mean, it's not exactly the same thing that you're doing, but he works with like Leupold. Some Decked is another company that uses him. They have
Hmm.
like systems for truck beds and stuff. But he was showing. I talked to him about this is when I was back at my old company Webfoot, and we were looking for other ways to attract clients. And so he also did these quizzes,
Hmm.
and he'd call it. Everyone's heard of first party data. He
Okay.
called it zero party data, where you're getting like you're literally owning the information and
Hmm.
even better than demographic data, which you can sometimes buy with varying levels of accuracy. You're literally getting like actionable or like interest data from the person that is filling out your quiz. And then what they would do is, it'd be you fill out this quiz and get entered to win, a new scope or a new, GoPro or whatever the giveaway was. And then they
Hmm.
would give away products weekly, but in order to do the quiz, it was like, what kind of car do you drive? Why are you interested in getting one of these decked systems?
Uh-huh.
What would you do with like? It's just everything that you'd want to know from a marketing standpoint to determine what kind of content should we then send this person,
Yeah.
which sounds like exactly like what you're talking about. But again, he was, who knows the exact level of
Yeah.
just what you're saying is like, oh, this sounds like what I've heard from this other guy. We ended up not working with him because of uh, we were doing concrete coatings,
Hmm.
and it felt like it was a better system for products that could be like nationally shipped. Whereas the service that had to literally, you had to be in my town that we were doing this in order for it to be valuable. Whereas if you can open it up to the world and you can ship the product anywhere, Now that's, you just, the pool's much bigger, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
But yeah.
a little bit. Yeah, I think it's about 60 or 70%. One of the things that I've noticed with a lot of folks that do quizzes is sometimes, and I don't know if this was the case there, but they make it more like a survey. And that's one of the things
Mm,
that differentiates us. We make, my background is instructional design, right? And, so I've got
yep.
training in how to create questions and all that kind of stuff. And we really focus on behavior based questions as opposed to
Mm,
just what people tell you. And I'll give you a really quick example. There's a colleague that I have, and I was giving her some advice on a quiz that she was trying to build. And she was asking people, she was helping them get government funding. And so she would ask them, do you have a team of people? And of course, what are they going to say? Yes, we do have a team of people. I said, that's the wrong question because they're going to tell you what they think you want to hear.
you want, yeah.
The question needs to be, when something happens A, B, and C, who does it for you? A, I do it myself. B, I have a team that does it. C, I hire somebody else to do it. The difference in those
Mm,
two questions is going to be a wealth of data because now it's not just a yes and we really don't know what's happening. Now you're getting a distinction. Okay, they could be outsourcing it to somebody else, they could have a team that does it, or they could be really taking it on themselves. And if they're taking it on themselves, your marketing message is going to be different than if they've already got an outsourcing team that they're working with. And that's the level
mm,
of depth we get into with these questions, which if you're a data person, it gets to be really exciting because now you're not just sending content to an email address. You're actually sending it to a real person and you know more about who they are and how they operate. And so your content and your offers are going to be on point.
that's awesome. So yeah, the continue with this journey or evolution of the quizzes.
Well, yeah. So when I left my last day job, like, and I keep bringing it up because it was a pivotal point. I knew that I needed to get people, and so I sent out. I haven't talked to people in about 2.5 years because while I was working, I couldn't have a business on the side, and so I sent them a link to that quiz that I talked about. The Which entrepreneur are you? So within 2 weeks, I had 500 people back on my email list. So I know people who struggle for years to get 100 people on their email list. In 2 weeks, I got those 500 people back. And so when I did the quiz, when I wanted to expand that, I said, now let me add ads into it because I needed to get it in front of more people. Right? It was working with that small group. Now let me do it for more people. And that was amazing because I spent my first time trying to figure out ads, right? Didn't know what I was doing. I spent about $500 in that first 2 weeks to try to figure things out. And I actually shut my ads off because like Facebook took money out of my account, right? Um, and then my coach said, well, what did you make? And I went back and I had spent $500 in ad, but I had booked 2 clients for a total of $8,500.
Mm,
So I started to understand the ROI of quizzes. And that's what I think, people, quizzes and ads and using the technology in a way that's going to really get a good ROI. If you gave me $500 and I gave you $8,500, you'd give me $500 all day long.
as much as I can, yeah, totally.
Right. And so,
Yeah.
and so I just started doing that and doing that for other clients in all different kinds of niches. But then you add the power of Chat GPT. And that's where, it just really, it gets really kind of exciting for people because the big thing that people struggle with, there's a lot of tools out there now, like almost every other month somebody has a new tool for creating quizzes, but what's valuable is the content. And just like that example that I shared with you about like the different types of questions, like knowing how to get Chat GPT to give you the right types of questions because of the prompts
Mm,
that you're putting in, that's true value. And that's what I created. I took our process because we had a whole process. We made these quiz grids. We interviewed our clients to get the information we needed to create the quiz content. And I was able to take that and configure it for Chat GPT prompts. And so now I've got people that can use those prompts, and it's about 30 something prompts. And it literally goes through from the foundations of, helping you get clear about who your audience is and what your offer is. And it builds all the way up to your quiz title, your outcomes, the emails for each outcome, your Facebook ads. And so it literally takes
mm,
you through so that by the end of this, you've got about 30 pages of content, But now you've got it. You can take it, you can tweak it, you can add your flavor to it, but you can actually go and build your quiz because your content is already done.
Mm. So how I don't know if you've like to what degree you have measured this, but I'm assuming that you have some idea of this is a process that used to take us, 100 hours and now it takes us 5 hours or whatever it is. How much did that change the production work of getting one of these delivered?
So for us, if the content is good, if the content was good, and I say that because, when you ask people questions, I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs I've talked to at the start of the process. And I said, well, okay, let's talk about who your ideal client is. And we go all around the world because they really haven't figured that out, right? But if we had gotten good
Mm.
content, I would, it would take me probably anywhere from 8 to 10 hours because in our process, we're not just creating quiz questions, we're doing an interview with you, we're creating the quiz title, the hook, the questions, and then the emails. And if you've got 4 outcomes, each outcome is going to have its own email series. And
Mm.
each email series is about 5 to 7 emails. Right, so we're literally
Yeah.
writing all that content. Then we're writing your landing page. So it's about 8 to 10 hours of creating your content. Now you can do that with ChatGPT. You can do that for in 2 hours.
Mm. That's awesome. And so again, like you, I'm assuming that when you're using the uh, the process of because you guys, your company is using ChatGPT in conjunction with the meetings, the video meetings with clients. You're not just saying, "Here it is, use it yourself." Correct?
No, we are.
Or you do both?
I taught a whole master class on, I will give you the prompts and you could take them just like you said before, being worried about people taking it and using it. Listen, if you want to take it and go take my prompts and go use them, go have at it. Right, and I
Yeah.
still have had people have to come back because again, I'll give you a perfect example. I had a guy in our class and he was, he was, I want to help people become champions in their mindset. So you can't put that in Chat GPT. Right? Like
Mm.
he was putting that in there, like it's not giving me the answers that well your language is off. Like nobody goes to
Mm.
bed saying I want to be a champion in my mindset. No.
Yeah.
They do say I want to learn how to, think differently or change my mindset so I can make more money, so I
Mm.
can have more freedom. And so when by the time we configured his language, then his prompts were set up the right way. And then he
Yeah. Yeah.
started getting really valuable information. So there's yes, we can have all the prompts so you can go do it yourself. And a lot of times it's that refinement. How do I modify this? Because you don't have the clarity that you really think you have. And that's where our strategy work comes in.
Yeah. I think that makes perfect sense. That the well, first of all, that people I can't remember. I think it was Gary V. I'm sure you know Gary if you've been in the internet space for that long.
Yeah.
But he said that his phrase was ideas are shit, execution is the game. But it's the whole concept of just like I can literally tell you exactly step by step what to do, but it's the nuance, like to execute a project like you're saying, you can't just I feel like the if you made a step by step process on how to edit a video, like how to make a good reel, right?
Yeah.
There's still like that artwork of, but it has to be like there's got to be a hook and it's got to be interesting and creative and it's like there's a little piece of the person with the experience is going to make a different video following the exact same process as the person that's never done it before, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, it reminds me of Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if anybody remembers that book, one of his very first books called Blink, right? I think
Mm.
is what it was called.
Yep.
And, he talks about how, I think it was a story in there about how they asked Michael Jordan, well, how did you do X, Y, and Z? And so he gave them all these steps. I did one, two, three. And then when they watched the video, like, you didn't do any of that, because we're not always aware of exactly what we think we know what we did, but there's so
Mm.
much that our intuitive response to something based on our experience, based on what we know, based on how we think, and each person thinks differently. And so
Yep.
all those nuances are going to make you take step two and do it differently than 25,000 other people, and you're going to have different results.
Totally. No, I think that's great, and I just the you for someone that has experienced what we're talking about, it's so like, yes, they're tracking with us. For the person that maybe hasn't, it might not. It's hard to quantify the value of that expertise and the experience and the repetition
Yeah.
until you've been in a situation where you don't have it, and then you can contrast it with then getting it,
Yeah.
or having the expert come in.
Hmm.
I'm curious what else as far as like I don't know what are the other things that in the process of creating quizzes,
Hmm.
the common mistakes that you see people make outside of not being clear on
Hmm.
maybe who their target is and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
what are the and this could be errors or issues with the software that they're trying to use, the strategies. I love the example of asking like survey questions versus behavior questions. That's
Hmm.
brilliant. Give me some other nuggets of like the most common mistakes that are made in this, like for people that are trying to tackle this problem.
Yeah, great question. One of the real big mistakes is people start with the questions first. And and they'll come up with, and they'll say, I want to know all the questions I want to ask. Again, you're thinking about a survey. And I always say, listen, I don't need to know, like if I'm the quiz taker, I don't need to know my first name and last name. I don't need to know how many husbands I have, right? Because,
Mm.
I already know that stuff, but you want to give them value that they didn't have before. Like you have to give them insight. And if you're only asking survey questions, it's really hard to do because I'll share the data with you. I don't want to know my age and my
What
kids.
I already know,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't want to know that. So you have to start with the outcomes first rather than the questions, right? You start with the outcomes. So a quick example, we just did this with a client. And she's got a real heart for helping women who want to have better communication in their families, right? And so in the beginning she was going to ask all these questions about, well, how often do you communicate and how often do you do this and this and this, and that wasn't giving her real value for her people until we started saying, well, what are the outcomes that they want, right? And so we came up with this quiz that was all about um, how what's the best way for you to change your story, right?
Mm.
Are you the reflective champion? Are you the breakthrough queen? Are you this? But we were coming up with things that would connect with her audience because we started with the outcomes first. And now we get the questions that help you identify which category you fit into. And so that's part of our secret sauce that we do that. And I have no qualms sharing that with folks because it's not as easy to do because most people don't think that way. I've been thinking this way for 20 something years. And so I can help people think that way, but it's not always the easiest thing. And it's why people gravitate toward, let me just put these questions together. And a lot of people will do that with folks they find on Fiverr. And it got to the point where I actually had to create an offer called Fix My Quiz Funnel because people would go somewhere and they get these like cheap quizzes and they're like, this isn't working. And then they have to come back to me and I have to help them fix their quiz funnel. So that's the number one. The second thing is tied to that, and it's a funnel. It's not just a quiz. And I've seen so many people do this. They build a quiz and I'm saying, well, where are they going after? I don't know. They're on my email list now. And so what are you doing from now they're on your list? I don't know. They're on my email list. I'm like, hooray. Okay, you got people on your list. But this is a funnel. And so you've got to guide people through step by step. On the back end, you're going to have an email sequence that nurtures them to the next step you want them to take. And then on the front end, just like in any good funnel, how are you going to get traffic to it? And folks don't think about that. They literally think, and it's the same thing with podcasts, right? People say, well, I'm going to start a podcast. That's going to be my marketing strategy. And I'm like, you do realize you got to get people to listen to your podcast. So there's not
Mm.
just magical podcast. I'm going to get listeners, magical quiz. I'm going to get people to sign up. A funnel means you have to have a way to drive people to it. So what's your traffic strategy? So you've got to think about, you've got to think about that. And then the last piece is you mentioned it with the technology. Like every other month, I see quiz tools coming up, and we're actually doing a whole series now where we're going through and using the tools and showing people, like, the pros and the cons of the tools and those kinds of things. People will often go for the thing that's the cheapest, and I get it. A lot of us were bootstrapping our businesses when we started. However, if you are always going for the thing that's the cheapest or the most freest, you're gonna miss out on some of the real benefits of being able to collect the data, because a really
Mm.
great platform doesn't just let you collect the quiz outcome, it also allows you to capture all the questions that they ask to get to the outcome. And now you're able to cross segment, based on not just your quiz questions, but we always throw in a little bit of demographic questions in there as well. But you're
Yeah.
able to now cross segment people based on that information.
And how many questions is like the perfect quiz?
Between 7 to 10 questions is
Okay, and
better.
it's generally like you said, find out what type of entrepreneur you are. What are other like titles that are intriguing, or how do you craft a title that's like, ooh, that's interesting?
Yeah, we do a lot of work up front. When I say, we ask them questions and we get that information. So we ask people about their brand and who their competitors are. So we do a lot of marketing research up front because we're marketers, right? And so some of the titles that we've come up with, we work with a gynecologist, and her
Mm.
quiz was "Where did my O go?" And we were talking about that. She was helping women with their libido, right?
Mm.
And and so it could be that your libido has changed because you're on medication, because you're stressed out, because you're not hydrated. See the outcomes
Mm.
first, and then we go back and get the questions that help us get to those outcomes. We did.
Uh,
We did another. We had a client who was, she was a coach for women, and she had something called the Wifey Boot Camp, right? And so
mm.
her quiz, it came out to be, what's the best way to attract your God-fearing husband? Right, that was her shtick, right? That she did. The titles are always going to be based on, though. We try to make them based on the pain point of what your audience wants, and so it's not
Mm.
like the champion quiz. No. We did this for a person who was in the she's in the consulting space, and she helps companies with their employee engagement and the team building. And so her quiz was all about the employee engagement audit or the employee engagement assessment, right? And then we did another one. What's your employee something? I think hers might have been employee engagement. What's your engagement scorecard? No, it was your culture scorecard, your workplace culture scorecard is that we did for her. And sometimes
Mm.
we change the word quiz, especially if we're working with higher end clients. If you're B2B, you can still use this same strategy, but you're not going to call it a quiz. You may call it an
Mm.
audit, or you may call it a scorecard and give it to them that way.
Okay, love that. Do you think what types of products or services does this not work well for?
Well, that's a good question, because we've also had it work for e-commerce. E-commerce does it a lot. One of my very first client was an e-commerce client, and I always tell that story because that was when I really, really understood the power of this. She sold eyelashes, and within 2 weeks, the people that took that quiz generated over $23,000 in sales for
Mm.
eyelashes. So it does work for e-commerce.
And that one was literally like, what type of eyelashes are best for me or something?
Yeah, exactly. The quiz title was "What type of lash is right for me?" Right? What
Okay.
type of lash is right for you? That was the name of the quiz.
Yeah.
And they were taking it. It said, "This is the lash for you," and people would go buy it. Right?
Wow.
And yeah, and this was right before the pandemic started, so it was like really
Hmm.
early on. But that was huge results for that. So it works for e-commerce. I think who it doesn't work for, it works. It doesn't work if you don't know what you're selling.
Mm.
We've used this for
You have to
authors
know
to
the
help.
pain.
So you have to know the pain point. You have to know where you're driving people to. We've done it for authors to sell more books.
Mm.
We've done it for people who are in the travel space who are trying to get people who where's the where should my
Ideal
destination
vacation.
wedding be,
Oh yeah.
right? We did it for a
Yeah.
person who sold candles, right? Which
Mm.
type of scent will soothe you? Was the name of that quiz.
Mm.
Right. So, we're creative enough to take a look at people's businesses and help them figure out what's going to be attractive to their audience. But again, if you don't know what you're selling, if you're not driving traffic to it, if you don't have a really good offer, it's not going to work. And that's quite honestly with any lead magnet, which is what a quiz is.
Right. That's awesome. I'm thinking one of the things you had said before, as far as a possible topic, is the secret to getting good content from ChatGPT. What would you say that is, or what are the strategies or tactics to get the content that you want from ChatGPT?
Yeah, it's about the build. One of the reasons that our quiz process for ChatGPT has so many layers to it is because people want to come in and just say, well, ChatGPT, help me create a quiz. And like, you can't start there. We start way back with the foundation. What's your unique selling proposition? Who's your audience? What offers are going to be right for this audience? Because now in ChatGPT, you're building those layers. So when you're finally ready to ask the quiz questions, when you're finally ready to say, give me the email series for X, Y, and Z, or the landing page copy, it has all of that data to build on. And it's not just give me a quiz. And I see people do the same thing with their email copy. I want you to write an email about blah, blah, blah. Well, who are you writing it for? Why are you writing it? What experience do these people have with you? Is this cold email? Is this warm audience? Are these people you haven't talked to in
Mm,
2.5 years? You've got to, give it all of that context in order to get the right content.
mm. So when with this is more of just like understanding how ChatGPT works, but every time you are engaging in ChatGPT, do you like are you starting with a fresh, I don't even know what they call it. It's like a clean slate, and then you start from scratch and you're saying, here's, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my business, and you start putting in prompts. Is that basically the approach?
That's what I do. Yeah. Now, if it's
Yeah.
something I want to continue on that I was working on before, I'll go back to it, because it's a learning platform, right? So
Yeah.
the thing I started with 3 weeks ago, it may have gotten some new stuff in now. So let me give it a refresh, right? Let me start here,
Mm,
and I can take things that it gave me before, say, hey, let me take the description that it came with before, like 3 weeks ago. Let me put that description and say, hey, based on X, Y, and Z, can you update this for me? Right? Because it's
mm.
always learning, and that's the beauty of it, that there it becomes like the potential for it becomes exponential because of that learning ability that it has.
And then my so other thought is that you have, I don't think you said 30 prompts or something.
Mhm.
Um, they it's not like, to what extent can or is the process automated where you're like filling out a, and I guess I'm part of me is wondering, it's probably doesn't make sense to fill out like a type form or Google form and just have every single thing run through every prompt, take the data from there, run through ChatGPT, and then kick back the final thing. It's better to have it be, I submit a prompt, now that's not what I wanted, let me try this version, or edit and then go to the next one after you're satisfied with what you got. Is that more of the approach that you like?
The answer is and
Mm,
because there's space for both. Like we're actually working on that. Like right now, like we're taking a look at the backside of how can we put this and make it just prompts for people to fill in like these 6 or 7 questions and to give everything out, because we can do that, right? That's what we did. It was with me, instead of asking me that, right, which is what we were doing manually. It's now going to ask Chat GPT that, and it will give you that information. However, you in that case you do lose the ability though to go back in and say, can you refine X, Y, and Z? So there's a pro and a
yes.
con to that.
Yeah, so you try it, but you might need to adjust. That makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, the other, I guess I'm curious. I honestly I didn't come into this thinking about this, but my wife and I have um, review software for home service companies. That's
Hmm.
so Boolean is a, you can see the light behind me.
Yeah.
That's it's a review software. And we have been going after like Facebook ads and LinkedIn strategy, and it's a super effective software that's used by probably, I would say, 40% of the highest or largest residential painting companies in the country use it. So we got into this niche little consulting group, and all the painting companies that are in here nationally are all referring us around.
Hmm.
But now we have to grow beyond just that consulting company and get in front of businesses that aren't word of mouth referrals, so they've potentially never heard of us.
Yeah.
So trying to make this super practical and being selfish of like, okay, could this, or how, what questions would you have?
Yeah.
Because honestly, I'm like, maybe we should hire you to help us figure out how to do these or to get leads for this.
Yeah.
Does a software like that, and it's super specific, so we're literally helping and driving Google reviews.
Yeah.
And so we've created like a click funnel
Hmm.
for Facebook ads, but I often feel like the part that I don't like about the click funnel approach is that it's literally like there's a 60-second video of us saying like we can get you 30 reviews in 60 days, click here, whatever. But it's like the barrier to entry is too, it sounds like too good to be true, and they're not, we I want to give them something of value
Yeah.
right away. Like, here's something you can do to get reviews yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's like now they're in the system, kind of like you said at the beginning of your strategy for your own marketing company.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's stuff that we could provide to a much larger audience, get them to start following us, and then upsell the right clients that because they've got to be a large enough size
Yeah.
to justify automating the process.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're, a one man in a painting truck,
Right.
like you're not going to pay for a software. You're just going to ask the customer to leave you a review. But if you've got 20 trucks,
Yeah.
now the automation is like a no-brainer. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense?
Oh yeah, it absolutely does. And you're talking about that place where a lot of my clients are, where the word of mouth is kind of like it's reached a tipping point, right? And we've got that covered. So how do we now expand and reach more people? But you're also talking about making sure that you're pulling in people who are not buyers today, but they will be buyers in 6 months, or they will be buyers
Mm,
in 3 months. And so you've got to wait. Like when we talk about marketing, we say there's 3 levels to it, right? The first thing is people have to be aware that there's a problem. So there's a ton of
mm,
people out there that don't even know that that's a problem. And you could have a quiz that brings them in and so I didn't even know that I could do this with Google reviews. Oh my gosh. And then which leads to the second thing. Wait, there's a solution for this? Oh my gosh, this company they do that? Oh wow. And then the third layer is you're the best solution for that, right? And that's what this
mm.
process, kind of allows to do. So we could absolutely brainstorm a title and some options for you to take a look at, and then you get to choose or you get to test and see which one is going to work. But there's absolute ways for you to provide value to people and make sure you're not just getting the people who are ready to buy today, but you're also pulling in those people into your funnel who are going to buy in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, so you don't have to worry about where your next leads are coming from.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm thinking that the what other questions do you have like when you're trying to qualify? So qualify me as a client for you. What
Yeah.
questions are you like based on what I've told you? You like tell me more about this or this. I'm just curious. What does that process look like?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask questions about, like, what kind of tools are you using now in your marketing, right?
Yeah, we have HubSpot and using the ClickFunnels tool,
Yeah.
and then we're running like Google and Facebook ads.
Right. So what that tells me is that you understand the value of some automation, right? You invested in tools because if you're using HubSpot and ClickFunnels, there's already an investment there. So that means you're my people, right? If you'd have told me that you're only using like Mailchimp or MailerLite, you're probably not looking at a solution like this because you haven't realized that you need to graduate some of the automations and all those kind of things. So that's going to help me figure
Mm,
that piece of it out. Another question I would ask you is, what's the reason you want to use a quiz? Why are you thinking about
I would
this?
say I think I would modify what I said a second ago, but I would say it's because I feel that our current so word of mouth has been great, but it's only good to a certain extent, and
Mm-hmm.
our other attempts at lead generation have just been like more cumbersome and difficult than I feel like it should be. Because
Right.
at the end of the day, the software that we have is phenomenal. Like literally, it took the company that I was previously the marketing director for from just an average. They had 60 reviews, and
Mm-hmm.
in 2 years they were the highest rated painting company in the country. So
Wow.
it's like literally of all the painting residential painting companies in the entire country that we have like this case study, and
Mm-hmm.
then we've done it again with concrete coatings companies with other residential painting companies that are in this space. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's such a good tool, and it's so hard. It's like literally the easiest sale to someone that's in this consulting space,
Mm-hmm.
but someone that's not in the space that doesn't know who these other painting companies are.
Yeah.
It's like discombobulating, or like they just are like, how could it be that good?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't seem real. And so I feel like if we could provide value for free or
Mm-hmm.
share little secrets or nuggets of like, hey, whatever you're doing to get reviews,
Right.
do this also and watch what happens. And
Yeah.
then just like give away, that's again, just like I just want to give away the secrets. Or you could just have us do it and it'll make your life easy. You pay
Mm-hmm.
the check once and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Like, so depending on the type of person you are or what stage you are in business, you can go the manual route
Mm-hmm.
or you can use our software. So it's a long-winded answer, but I would say the reason that I literally came into this call because I love AI,
Uh-huh.
and now as you're talking, I'm like, oh man, this is interesting because I think that there is a big missed opportunity that we're experiencing in nurturing people. Like we're spending hundreds of dollars a week on ads, and people are seeing those, presumably, or at least Facebook telling us that they are. But the number of, like, the people that are actually coming into the funnel, they're using fake email addresses and phone numbers because
Yeah.
they don't, it's, again, I feel like there's that perception of spam or scammy. And I feel like if there was a way to add something of value that they wanted, they'd be, or we could provide value and then they opt in further, they'd give us real information to actually see if we can help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's another sign that you would be somebody that we would work with because you understand the value of marketing. It's not just I want to quiz because it's fun. It's not just I want to quiz because I think people like taking quizzes because I hear that all the time. The real net of this is that you're going to win because you're going to get more leads and you're going to get more information that you didn't have before. Because if all you had before was an email address, which is what you get with most lead magnets, I'm going to give you my email address, you're going to give me a download, and that's it. It's over, right?
Yes. Yes.
But now imagine you've got an email address and you've got 10 points of data. So you're winning. They're going to win because now they've got more value. It wasn't just,
Yeah.
I watched a video for 2 minutes. Okay, right? And so,
Yeah.
and then the third thing is your bank account wins now because you've got more qualified leads that you can share this with. And over time, that grows as well. So we call it a win-win-win. It's a trifecta, for things. And when the quizzes work best with people that understand that, it's not just a novelty. I've built quizzes for people who didn't do anything with the data, right? It just sat there. Like we ask these questions for a reason. And it's now you're able to personalize your marketing and your messaging to those folks. And if you're not going to use it that way, you're really doing a disservice, not just to the quiz, but to yourself. You're not leveraging all the value that you have in that data so that you can make better marketing
Totally.
decisions.
That's awesome. So as we move to wrap up here, any other things top of mind that you came in excited to share that you'd like to?
I hear a lot of people talking about AI and how it's gonna, take over people's jobs, and it may. But I think the most exciting thing about this is that it's a fascinating time to be a part of this space. We've spent so many years talking about how people don't read, don't read, don't read, but then what captures the world is AI content. Right? So it's a really fascinating time to be a part of this where, things are changing. And I hope people are able to embrace that and not fear it. The more we embrace it, the more we learn, the more we explore. I think it creates a better space for everybody.
That's awesome. So last couple questions I ask everybody. Give me 3 book recommendations.
This is so hard. Chris, you don't know this about me, but I am addicted to books. I love books. I've got over $10,000 worth of books probably in my living space because I, just love them. So it's really hard for me to think about this question. But the ones that
I'm
came to
excited for
mind,
whichever ones bubble to the top. These are going to be
yeah.
good recommendations.
So Ready, Fire, Aim is one that comes to the top of mind for entrepreneurs because it just really teaches you how to just go for it and not aim first, but just fire to get it out there. It's a really great way to think about things. The other one, this is one of my favorites, is You Are a Badass at Making Money.
That sounds a
Love
good
that
title.
book. And then my other favorite book is more personal. I have, and it's personal because I love the author, but I actually have an autographed copy of Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou, and it's my
Wow.
favorite possession.
It's called I Am a Woman?
It's called Phenomenal Woman. It's a
Oh,
poem.
phenomenal.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Is that and this is maybe just because I am not a um, poet or a literary savant or something, but I'm assuming that's a very well known. I know Maya Angelou, um, but yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a very well-known poem, and this particular edition, it's illustrated by an artist. And so there's these great pictures. I'm trying to remember his name, but it's these great pictures of these women, and it's just beautiful. But it's one of her most well-known poems for women. Phenomenal Woman Yeah, just Google it. You'll find it. You'll love it. It's just a great poem.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, Sweet. And final question is, what is the give me a movie recommendation? And I always preface this with, I like whenever possible, like the sleeper hits that maybe are people haven't heard of. But obviously, if it's just the Dark Knight or one of the mainstream ones, that's fine too.
Oh, this is probably gonna like make me lose so many cool points. So I'm gonna give you two. So the one that I really like, but don't tell a whole lot of people, even if you're listening to this podcast, don't tell anybody. I like 2012, and I know it's such a bad movie, but I love that.
2012, is that that's like end of the world one?
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah, I watched it. I bought the DVD like 2 years ago. I mean, it's like I just like that movie, and I don't know why. I just will watch it every time it's on. But another movie that I think is really good is Magnolia. Um, Tom
Mm.
Cruise. I don't know why he didn't win an award for it, but it's one of my favorite roles of his, and it's an ensemble cast. It's a really good movie.
I haven't watched that one. Then I've heard it. I'm adding
Mhm.
it to my watch list, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So, if someone found any of this interesting and like to get in touch, what's your preferred method of people reaching out?
Preferred method is on LinkedIn or Facebook. You can find me at Tai Goodwin on either one of those places. And then, they can go to thatmarketingteam.com, and there's some great content. There's some great quizzes there that they can take to learn more about the process and what we do.
Awesome. Well, Ty, thank you so much for taking the time out to do this. I had a blast and learned a lot, and hopefully we stay connected and find a way to work together.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your attention and listening to this episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. Your feedback and comments mean the world to me. If you liked what you heard, please take a second, leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. If you've got suggestions for future episodes or just want to say hi, shoot me an email at chris@chriskiefer.com. Don't forget, I make it a point to include all the links to the books, movies, and resources mentioned on this episode in the show notes. You can see those directly below in the description or on my website, chriskiefer.com. Thanks so much, guys.